The Sinister Neighbor, 9 spine-chilling nights as his hidden terror drew closer and closer. Emily had always loved the colorful nights in her suburban neighborhood until now. The rattling hum of the diner's neon sign had faded to an unsettling stillness as Emily returned home from another grueling late shift. She dropped her bag on the kitchen floor before glancing out the window. There they were, the Johnsons, the picture-perfect family with their beaming smiles, gathering their children for one of their ever-present backyard barbecues. But tonight something felt off. A chill ran down her spine as she caught sight of their oldest son, Jacob, whose smile seemed too wide, stretched like an overly sweetened candy, as his eyes darted towards Emily's window. An inexplicable sense of dread gripped her heart. Shadows flickered near the edge of her yard. She swore she saw twisted forms slipping through the trees. It was late, and with Jake and Mia fast asleep upstairs, her mind began to twist in circles. Anxiety clawed at her throat as memories of previous nights resurfaced, nights spent wide awake in terror as odd sounds echoed through the walls. The whispers, the rattling of something unseen, the sounds that left her trembling with fear, picturing her children trapped in nightmares of the unknown. Emily tried to bury the gnawing fear beneath her daily to-do list, but it grew harder with each passing day. Mia, her sweet little girl, had started vanishing for hours, playing with the Johnson kids. Her return, marked by a vacant stare and an unsettling calm, made Emily's heart throb painfully. Something was wrong. The last time she picked up Mia from the Johnsons, she had dreamt of shadows dancing at the edge of her vision, the darkness bleeding into every corner of her consciousness. After an exhausting shift one evening, exhaustion weighing heavily on her, Emily stumbled home to find strange symbols drawn in the dirt on her porch. They looked like ancient markings, twisted and sinister, reminding her of folklore her grandmother whispered about in warning, remembrances of dark spirits lurking behind cheerful facades. Her chest tightened as she thought of the flickering lights in the Johnsons' home. Was an unseen force calling to her, delighting in her growing paranoia? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. That very night, Emily stood in her darkened living room, its eerie silence settling like a heavy fog. The crickets had ceased their song, replaced by the sound of her own heartbeat thrumming loudly against her ribs. A single knock echoed on her front door, slow and heavy, filled with intent. As she approached, dread laced every step. Would this knock reveal the truth behind the Johnsons' facade or seal her children's fate? Peering through the peephole, Emily caught a glimpse of the Johnsons huddled outside, their mouths twisted into predatory grins. The flickering streetlight nearby cast fleeting shadows across their flawless faces, giving them an otherworldly glow. She stumbled back, terror clawing at her throat. What would she find on the other side? What unspeakable horror awaited in front of her door, ready to drag her into the depths of a nightmare? The knock resounded again, a deliberate thud that vibrated through Emily's core. Her breath came in short gasps, each inhalation feeling like a panicked attempt to absorb the icy air that filled the room. She could hear a low murmur outside, almost a chant, syncopated with the dull thumps of her heart. Each knock was a countdown, an invitation. Emily, the voice drifted through the door, smooth like silk and cold as ice. It was Mrs. Johnson. "Open up, dear. We just want to talk." The cadence of her voice set off alarms in Emily's head. Talk? The last thing she wanted was to invite any more of the Johnsons' strange energy into her home. She took a step back, stumbling over a chair leg, the noise pulling her from the trance the voice had cast upon her. The chill of the room intensified as she spied movement through the window. Shadows shimmered in the glow of the pale streetlight, twisting and stretching as if alive. Her pulse raced, and in that moment she made a decision. Keeping her back against the wall, she rushed upstairs, her feet slapping against the wooden stairs, barely making a sound. The weight settled onto her shoulders as she reached the top. Her children. Are they safe? Would the darkness come for them too? As she pushed open Jake's bedroom door, she was greeted by the sight of her son, blissfully unaware, sleeping soundly in his bed. But the room felt different. The air was thick and stifling, and Emily could sense the oppressive unease lurking like a predator in the shadows. Mia? She called softly, knowing well her daughter had been missing too often, playing with the Johnsons. The answer came in a light giggle that echoed from the window. She performed a desperate sweep of the room. Emily rushed to Mia's bedroom, each step filled with rising dread. The door creaked open, revealing a chilling scene. Mia lay in bed, her small body cocooned in blankets, but the glow of the moon revealed something unnatural. Her eyes were wide open, fixated on the ceiling, her expression blank, almost serene. She could hear whispers echoing off the walls. They were not coming from her, but from a darker, more sinister source. Mia! She shouted, shaking her daughter. Wake up! The girl blinked slowly, her gaze shifting towards Emily, but it felt like her focus lay somewhere far away. Mommy, they want me to play, she murmured, her voice empty of any emotion. Panic surged through Emily. Who, sweetie? Who wants you to play? The Johnsons'. Mia's voice trailed off, thick with something that made Emily's skin crawl. They were watching. She felt it, lurking just outside the window like a swirling tempest, ready to draw her unwary child into its grasp. A sudden crash echoed from downstairs, rattling the fragile silence. Mustering every ounce of courage, Emily snatched Mia from her bed, cradling her against her chest as she bolted for the door. Descending the stairs, the place had transformed. The air was thick with an unnatural fog, shadows danced along the walls, mimicking the frantic rhythm of her heart. Outside, she could see the Johnsons through the living room window, their figures distorted, a grotesque silhouette against the fading light. And then, as if sensing her gaze, they turned, their grins spreading impossibly wide. Come out, Emily! We have so much fun waiting for you. Their words slithered through the cracks, intrusive and enticing like a predator's lure. Emily felt the tug of a deep, primordial dread as she reached for the front door. It was time to break free. Time to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Yet before she could swing the door open, the lights flickered ominously. And then everything went dark. What awaited them outside in the suffocating silence, where fear thrummed in the air? Would they be drawn into the Johnsons' sinister game, or could she break the grasp of the shadows closing in? Emily's heart thundered in the pitch black, the impenetrable darkness swallowing every sound. The only thing she could hear now was her own breath, rapid and shallow. Holding Mia close, she tried to turn her fear into a fortress. But the quiet felt alive, whispering threats that coiled tight around her mind. Mommy, I don't like this game, Mia whispered, her voice barely above a breath, laced with fear. She pulled back slightly to look into her daughter's eyes. They were wide, glistening, the kind of gaze that could pierce through the darkest of shadows. I'm right here, baby. We're going to be okay, she lied, her own voice quaking. Another thud echoed from downstairs, loud and demanding. It reverberated like a heartbeat, relentless and foreboding. The chanting grew louder, merging with the rhythmic knocks. Words distorted and twisted until they formed a grotesque melody that made Emily's skin crawl. Was it just her imagination, or did it sound like her name entwined within their song? Stay close, she ordered, clutching Mia tighter as she navigated through the darkened hallway with memories of where the walls should be. Cautiously, her hand brushed against the banister, and she took a hesitant step toward the stairs. Should she go back to Jake? Should they all stay hidden? A half-formed thought of running amok through the house darted through her mind. But fear held her shoulders captive. They were trapped in their own home. Suddenly, a wave of cold washed over her, sharp as a blade. The air turned stale, and the whispers morphed into sharp laughter, echoing through the halls. It was intoxicating, teasing, almost welcoming. Emily hesitated again, paralyzed by the creeping realization that the shadows were not just cold, they were alive. They were breathing, and they were hungry. Mia, listen to me, Emily said, her voice urgent yet trembling. We need to get to the front door and Mommy! Mia shrieked, pointing toward the window that shadowed the room in dark. Emily's gaze followed. The figure of Mrs. Johnson stood on the porch, a head silhouetted against the moonlight. But the moonlight seemed to distort her features, creating a mocking visage. Shadows distorted her face, stretching her smile into something unrecognizable, something that didn't belong to a human. It felt like a sick joke played by the darkness. Mia, we have to move. Now! As she turned, the child clutched Emily's arm tighter, her warmth fading against the chill creeping into the house. Emily glanced back towards Jake's room. She couldn't leave him. She wouldn't. With a hesitant breath, she whispered, "Stay here and keep quiet." Heart pounding, she carefully placed Mia down, trying to project calm. She turned toward Jake's room, urging her legs to move without them betraying her. Each step felt like wading through thick fog. Fear constricted around her throat as the whispers intensified, drumming in her ears, drowning out her thoughts. "Come play with us, Emily," the voices taunted, hissing like serpents. The words filled her with dread. They were pleading yet demanding, like a moth drawn toward an insatiable flame. As she pushed open Jake's door, the darkness expanded, swallowing the last remnants of light. A low whimper emerged from the depths of that void. "Jake?" Emily's voice trembled, lost in the velvety blackness. Her heart twisted as she fumbled, trying to locate the thick curtains, searching for the window. Maybe the sunlight would ward off whatever lurked inside. But then, the air shifted again. A new presence emerged, wrapping around her like chains of ice. "Mom?" Jake's voice broke through, small and fearful, anchored in confusion. But that sound, her son's voice, was enough to illuminate the creeping despair. Emily's breath caught as she turned toward him, but before she could respond, the flickering shadows in the hallway pulsed with malevolence. They seemed to draw in, ready to strike at the smallest hint of weakness. "Emily!" Mrs. Johnson's voice dripped from the shadows, resonating within the dark corners of the room. "Join us, we're waiting then." Silence wrapped around the family like a dark shroud. Just for a moment, the only sound was the quiet breathing of the three of them, suspended in uncertainty. But the silence cracked when the door slammed shut behind Emily, the sounds of laughter spilling into the room, cruel and triumphant. What could she possibly do to turn the tide against those waiting in the darkness? As the laughter echoed ominously, a chilling thought crossed her mind. Was something within her willing to play along? The shadows stirred, eager for a game she wasn't sure she could ever finish. Emily's body jerked as the door slammed, a thundering echo that rung in her ears long after it closed. Panic washed over her, hot and suffocating, as she turned wildly, searching for a way out. The oppressive shadows danced eagerly, responding to her fear like a predator to a scent. "Jake!" she gasped, clawing through the darkness toward her son. She strained her eyes, but the curtains were like thick black fog, swallowing any hint of light. The low whimpering grew louder as she reached out, her palm grazing something soft. "Mom! It hurts!" Jake cried, his voice raw and broken. "Where are you?" Emily urged, desperation clawing at her throat. The words spilled out, but the eerie laughter echoed in response, a cruel chorus relishing her distress. Cold fingers cupped her face, a chill that felt wrong, too wrong. "Let me go," Jake pleaded, and her heart cracked at the terror in his tone. "Mom!" A broken whisper crawled from the shadows. "Help me!" Emily's hands shook violently as she stumbled back. The shadows crept closer, curling around her like smoke, hungry and insidious. "Don't move!" She twisted her body, feeling her foot slip over an unseen object. A faint growl rumbled from the corner of the room, deep and visceral. She turned just as it erupted into a cacophony of monstrous laughter, a sound that clawed at sanity and made her blood turn to ice. "Play with us, Emily!" they echoed, a menacing symphony that wrapped her in despair. "Leave him alone!" she shrieked, instinctively lunging toward Jake's voice. Bowed low in the enveloping darkness, she finally found his trembling form. But something was amiss. Dread pooled in her stomach as she gripped his arm and pulled him to her. "Mom, I can't see," Jake whimpered, his grip slackening as he trembled. In the stillness, the air chilled further, swirling and pressing against them, like a thick descending fog. Emily felt Jake's small body jerk against hers, a response to the unseen horror creeping closer. "Stop! Just stop!" she howled, feeling herself give way to panic. "No, Mommy! We have to go!" he cried. A flash of instinct drove through Emily, her heart racing as she realized they had to escape, but where? The door loomed behind her, a dark portal teeming with threats. Whispers encircled them, pleading for her to give in, to surrender to the madness they promised. "Mia!" she exclaimed suddenly, the realization washing over her like cold water. She had left Mia behind. "Let us go back," Jake begged, tugging at her with surprising strength, desperation etched in every line of his face. But in that moment of clarity, uncertainty churned in her gut. "We can't! We have to get to the front door!" She nudged him forward, guiding him through the oppressive darkness. The shadows trembled with anticipation, their melodic taunts swirling around them. They flared up like wild beasts on the prowl, drawing nearer with every step. Emily's breath quickened, a rhythm that matched the thunderous beat in her chest. The door felt impossibly far, a shimmering hope against the monstrous reality that threatened to engulf them. Suddenly she stopped. An icy touch gripped her shoulder from behind. Mrs. Johnson's voice oozed from the thick air, reverberating across the room, coiling around them. Just stay a while. Join us." Emily squeezed her eyes shut, forcing back the surge of terror rising within her. This couldn't be the end. She wouldn't let it be the end. But then crack! The floor beneath them groaned, splintering. A doorway opened wide where there was none, a yawning chasm of darkness. The oppressive laughter surged, demanding, inviting. As the shadows surged forward, something wicked flickered to life at the edge of Emily's vision. A path or a trap? Confidence wavered for only a heartbeat. "Jake! This way!" she shouted, yanking at his arm, leading him towards the swarming darkness at the threshold. But as they stepped closer, the laughter transformed into screams, rampaging around them like a storm. Time seemed to slow as the blood-curdling sound washed over her, and she understood all too well what awaited them at the end of that path. Could she truly escape, or would they all fall into the abyss together? The ground trembled beneath their feet, and Emily's heart dropped. Was she ready to face whatever lay beyond? Emily's breath hitched, a mix of fear and resolve fueling her strength. With Jake's hand gripped tightly in hers, she pushed forward. The yawning darkness writhed in anticipation, almost alive, teasing and whispering sweet nothings that twisted her gut. Her instincts begged her to turn back, to seek refuge anywhere but the shadowy maw ahead. "Keep moving!" she urged, her voice sharp as glass shards. Each step reverberated with the token uncertainty of their reality, an insistent reminder that danger lay in wait just beyond their reach. The air thickened, feeling more like boiling water than the cool night outside. She could almost taste the dread, sharp and metallic. Jake stumbled, catching himself against her leg. She pulled him close. "Stay with me, we'll get through this." But the deeper they moved into the unknown, the louder the cacophony grew. It morphed, twisting from laughter into a symphony of agonized wails. Each shriek burrowed into the back of her mind, relentless, scraping against reason. "What are we running from, Mommy?" Jake whispered, his voice trembling like a fragile leaf on a winter's day. "Just keep your eyes closed and hold on tight." She struggled to maintain her resolve, shaking her head to chase the terrifying thoughts away. She had to protect him. Without warning, the path shifted beneath them, the floor becoming spongy and unstable, teetering as though they trod on the skin of a living creature. Emily's heart slammed against her ribs as the floor creaked ominously. She could feel something breathing beneath them, lurking, waiting for a chance to strike. She pressed onward, dodging phantoms of fear that loomed before her. Just as they approached the edge of the abyss, the shadows loomed larger, surrounding them with a cold embrace. The whispers turned volatile, spiraling into a tempest of back-and-forth taunts, growing sharper, drowning out every coherent thought. "Join us, Emily! Embrace the darkness!" They called to her, voices layering and blending. Rational thought buckled beneath the weight of fear. "No! I will not!" she gasped, a desperate plea sloshing out of her mouth like poison. The temperature plummeted, a more than tangible rippling chill that pulled at her frail resolve. Suddenly, she spotted a flicker of light, a deceitful beacon amidst the encroaching darkness. "There!" she shouted, pointing its way. It beckoned her forward with frail hope. Yet as they staggered toward it, the shadows twisted, distorting ground and light. The darkness morphed in response to their movements, a creature growing more feral and chaotic. "Run!" she urged, pushing Jake ahead in desperation. The laughter returned, echoing off the walls, a maddening cycle that filled the air. They rushed toward the light, the sounds chasing them, biting at their heels like hungry wolves. In that moment, hope crashed wildly against fear, a dizzying dance filled with breathless anticipation. But as they closed in on the light, the floor beneath them buckled again. Emily cried out as the world shifted violently, plunging them into an abyss she was desperate not to fathom. The flickering light faded, diminishing like a dying ember. Shadows reached out, pulling her away from Jake, tugging at her limbs, whispering promises of sweet surrender. "Mommy!" Jake cried, terror quaking through his small body as he was torn from her grasp. Time froze, and Emily's heart fractured, despair pooling like ice in her veins. "No! Let him go!" she screamed, fighting against the encroaching darkness that thickened around her. The shadows thickened, pulling Jake further from her, the sounds of his cries turning into an echo. In that split second, Emily's mind raced. To save Jake, she needed to confront the nightmares, to prove the shadows wrong. With one last desperate lunge, she tried to reach her son, the darkness swirling like a violent storm. The world exploded into chaos, forcing Emily to confront the unspeakable question that clouded her vision. How would she slay the shadows lurking within, especially when they seemed to know her name? Cries echoed around her, piercing the darkness, and Emily realized it had only just begun. Emily gasped, the air clawing at her throat, a bitter, acrid taste flooding her senses. Shadows danced in a macabre waltz, reflecting the agony of her heart. She fought against the grasping darkness, each second stretching painfully, as she felt time slipping through her fingers like grains of sand. "Jake!" she screamed, her voice breaking, resonating through the obscurity. The echo mocked her, enveloping her in despair. The weight of darkness pressed against her, an invisible hand crushing her resolve. Jake's cries faded into the symphony of horror, swallowed whole by the entity that thrived in fear. With a surge of determination, Emily lunged into the swirling void, feeling it wrap around her like a damp shroud. She could see pinpricks of light faint, fleeting moments of her son's face, his wide eyes full of terror. "Stay with me. I'm coming!" But twice now, she tasted the futility of being lost in the dark. It was like confronting a nightmare that refused to end, that kept dragging her deeper into its cold core. The shadows laughed, a cacophony that reverberated painfully, their cruel mockery echoing her own fears. "You're too late. You'll never find him." Panic rose in her chest, a gasping creature clawing for escape. Memories spliced through her mind, warm summer nights under the stars, laughter shared, the way Jake's face lit up while playing. "No! I will fight. I want to let go of him." The shadows congealed, forming grotesque shapes that morphed into faces she recognized with terrible clarity, friends, family, people she had loved. They were twisted versions of themselves, their gazes hollow while they reached for her, crying out in agony, pulling her to join their despair. "Come with us, Emily." "No!" she shrieked, shaking her head fiercely. She pushed through the faces, their gestures clawing at her resolve. Her heart raced, instinctively knowing she had to break free, had to find Jake before he was lost forever. An explosion of light burst through the darkness. It wasn't warm or inviting, it felt like barbed wire slicing through her skin. But she couldn't stop. Drawing on her last reserves of will, she propelled herself toward it. The shadows thrashed about her, but the light grew, a beacon of resolve. As she neared it, Emily felt a surge of energy, a possibility, a glimmer of hope amidst the overwhelming despair. "Jake!" she called again, the sound solidifying her mission. But just then, the ground rumbled violently, the solidity of the earth beneath her feet buckling like paper. Emily stumbled, gasping, her hands flailing as she forced herself to stay centered. She caught a flicker of movement. Jake flickered in and out, just as lost in this interlude of fear as she was. Then, out of the shadows, a figure emerged. It stood tall and imposing, the embodiment of the dark presence, oozing malice and knowledge, like a puppeteer guiding its marionettes. Its eyes were pits of nothingness, reflecting a vast hunger. "You're never getting him back," it hissed, a voice that felt like ice running down her spine. "Don't listen to it." Jake's voice broke through the overwhelming fog, and for a moment, the shadows trembled. The figure flinched, as if the light had stung. Emily took a step forward, emboldened by her son's voice resonating in her heart. "Stay out of this, little one," the figure warned, its tones serpentine, uncoiling like the darkness surrounding them. "No! You will let him go!" she shouted, defiance surging through her veins, igniting the embers of her determination. A whirlwind of shadows whipped around her, the air thickening with an unbearable weight. "This is only the beginning, Emily. What you will face is even worse than what you can imagine." And at that moment, just when she thought she might grasp Jake again, darkness engulfed them both again, pulling them away from each other. She could hardly breathe as the void around them throbbed with menace, readying itself for whatever lay ahead. As the last remnants of her hope fluttered away like ashes in the wind, she felt the chilling truth settle, and this nightmare was far from over. What awaited them in the depths of despair? Would Emily find the strength to face this insatiable darkness? The final realization gripped her, freezing her heart. She wasn't alone anymore, and that might just be the darkest thing of all. Emily was yanked away, and the world around her twisted like a kaleidoscope gone mad. She landed hard on an uneven surface, grit scraping against her palms. Instinct kicked in, her breath coming in rapid bursts. Shadows clawed at her, creeping closer, slithering over her body, trying to squeeze the very wool out of her. She pressed her eyes shut to block out the horror. "Jake!" she cried, voice shaking, fear expanding in her chest like a balloon ready to pop. A muffled sound broke through the chaos. A whisper. "Mom!" It sent shivers racing through her limbs. Was it real? She could barely keep her thoughts straight. Focusing, she opened her eyes, finding herself in a space dimmed by an endless twilight. Shapes flitted at the edges, flickers of movement that made her skin crawl. "Jake!" she shouted again, forcing herself onto shaky knees. Her surroundings began to take form. An eerie landscape unfolded, twisted trees leaned over her like broken fingers, and the ground was a patchwork of thorny vines and damp leaves, each step causing her to wince. The whisper came again, stronger this time. "This way!" A flicker of light shone ahead, beckoning her forward. Adrenaline surged through her, and she stumbled toward it, the shadows hissing and writhing behind her, angry at her defiance. "Jake!" she called, desperation lacing her voice as she ran, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm. As she closed the distance, the light transformed, revealing a small clearing. In the center stood a cruel-looking stone altar, and etched in its surface were symbols that pulsed with an unsettling energy. She stopped, breath hitching in her throat. The whispers wrapped around her, seeping into her mind like toxic smoke. "He is here." A chorus of voices murmured, each one resonating through the ground beneath her feet, reverberating through her bones. "You will join him soon." Fear tightened like a vice. She made herself steady. "If Jake is here, I will find him." She stepped closer, scanning the perimeter of the clearing frantically. Each heartbeat echoed like a drum, amplifying her dread. Then she heard it, the anguished wail of a child. "Mom! Help me! Jake!" Emily's heart soared and plummeted simultaneously. Without thinking, she dashed forward, seeking the source of the cries. The shadows recoiled as if stung by her courage, and slowly, a small figure appeared at the edge of the clearing. Jake! His face was smeared with dirt and tears, eyes wide and terrified. She lunged towards him, but a chilling wind swept through, throwing her back. The shadow snickered, reaching out, trying to claim her. Stay away! She pulled herself up, her body feeling heavy, each movement requiring every ounce of her willpower. I won't let you take him. From the shadows, the figure loomed larger, its features sharpening as it stepped forward. You're too late, Emily. He belongs to me now. The darkness around it twisted, swirling in a tempest of despair. No! She shouted, fighting to keep it at bay. Just then, a vision surged through her mind, Jake playing with his friends, innocent laughter echoing in the depths of her memory. She could not let that joy be extinguished. Jake! She cried, reaching out, trying to bridge the horrifying distance. I'm here! I will save you! The darkness writhed, thick and suffocating, yet she felt a spark ignite within her. With every ounce of strength, she took a step forward, daring to break through the lines separating them. But as their eyes locked, fear twisted in Jake's expression, and understanding that chilled her marrow. He opened his mouth, but the words were swallowed in a cacophony of malicious laughter. Your love for him, it's a weakness. A weakness I will exploit, the figure hissed, and as it stepped closer, shadows surged forward like a tidal wave, threatening to tear them apart once again. The vile laughter mingled with Jake's frightened screams as darkness enveloped them, and Emily felt her footing shift. What do you want from me? She screamed into the howling void, clutching at the fading vision of her son. Everything, echoed the haunting voice, spinning around her in a whirlwind of malice. With a pulse of fragile hope, Emily drew herself up, waiting, heart racing, for the breaking point. The threats swirled dangerously around her, and deep down, the shadows seemed to whisper secrets, dark secrets, that promised more horror. What lay hidden in the shadows, waiting to be revealed? Would Emily uncover the truth or be forever lost in the darkness consuming her? With an urgent heart, she stepped forward once more, ready to confront whatever nightmare awaited her next. A piercing silence followed the last echo of the shadow's voice. Emily gripped the ground, the cool earth grounding her, reminding her that she was still here, still fighting. She could sense the darkness swirling greedily around her, hungry for despair. It craved her fear. Everything the word echoed, hammering in her skull like a war drum. What did it mean? What would it take? Emily's heart raced as she tried to think, to strategize. She couldn't back down, not now. The whispering continued, a maddening chorus that slipped through her thoughts. Join us, join him, a part of her screamed to say no, yet here Jake was, his frightened eyes pleading for her to save him. Jake! She howled again, the urgency of his name twisting through the violent shadows. Just hold on. She forced herself to focus, to breathe past the swirling mass that threatened to pull her under. There had to be a way out. There had to be a way to get to him. From somewhere in the abyss, the figure spoke again, voice smooth like oil, coating her in dread. Look at the altar, Emily. You know what must be done. Shadows twisted into grotesque shapes, looming over her. The altar loomed before her, symbols throbbing ominously with a sickly light. They seemed to writhe and pulse, captivating and terrifying all at once. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but where? Jake was still lost, and his cries filled the air, desperate yet fading. Mom! Please! The wails sliced through the chaos, and something within Emily snapped. Anger flared, mingling with fear, igniting a spark she couldn't ignore. What must I do? She roared at the shadow, defiance rising like bile in her throat. It's simple, the figure hissed. Sacrifice your own desires, and you will have him back. Everything you cherish, trade it for him. The darkness pulsed, almost expectantly. The idea shook Emily to her core, freezing her heart in terror. But she couldn't ignore the implication. To save Jake, would she have to give herself up entirely? Get away from him! She shrieked, stepping toward the altar, the symbols catching her gaze like a moth to a flame. The darkness recoiled, its laughter a horrible symphony around her. You think you can stop me? You are already trapped. He is mine! No! With every ounce of defiance, she surged forward. The whispers became a cacophony, drowning out everything but her resolve. She reached for the altar, desperate to understand its power. The moment her fingers brushed the cold stone, a shock coursed through her, images erupted in her mind. She saw Jake, seen through the eyes of the shadows, writhing in pain, trapped in a world of anguish. Every joy, every laugh she had ever shared with him came crashing down. The shadows wanted her to surrender, wanted her to become one of them. "Let me in!" they taunted, and the darkness pressed closer, shadows lapping at her heels, hungry to engulf her completely. With her heart pounding, Emily fought against the tide. "No more!" she screamed, the sound piercing the veil of despair like a bright, desperate star. "I will not become one of you." In that fierce moment, she understood it was not her love they sought to exploit, but her sacrifice. She had to break free, not just for Jake but for herself as well. She would find another way. But would it be enough? The darkness lurked ever closer, sensing her moment of awakening, and somewhere, deep within, Jake's cries transformed, laced with a new urgency of their own. "This way, Mom! You have to hurry!" His voice faded again, chasing her thoughts into the depths of frigid uncertainty. Emily braced herself. In this realm of twisted shadows, the final confrontation was near. What would she discover if she turned her back on the altar? And could she truly bring Jake back without succumbing to the very darkness that threatened to consume them both? As the figure loomed larger, the darkness thickening, Emily's resolve steadied. The shadows had never encountered a fire like hers. Would she win this battle, or would the abyss claim not just Jake, but her as well? The chilling unknown gripped her, urging her to take a risk. The moment of truth loomed, and at its core, the sinister promise of everything lost awaited her. Would the ultimate price be worth the chance? The shadows pulsed, a living force around her, eager to snuff out the last spark of hope within Emily. She felt their cold tendrils inching closer, brushing against her skin, leaving a trail of ice and fear. Her heart thudded wildly, each beat reminding her of what was at stake. "Jake! Mom!" His voice was weaker now, almost lost in the sea of whispers. They called to her, tempting her with promises of power and freedom, as if swapping her very soul would bring Jake back. But she couldn't let them win. Determination surged within her, fierce and blazing. "No!" she shouted, voice shaking but resolute. "I will not join you." The air twisted, growing heavy with the darkness's palpable anger. The figure loomed, its features sharpening into something grotesque, a face carved from nightmares. "You defy me? You think there is power in your defiance?" The shadows seemed to recoil, gathering like a storm, waiting for the moment to unleash their fury. She needed to act, and fast. What if the altar held the answer? What if embracing it could break the spell? Summoning every ounce of courage, she stepped forward, feeling the cold stone beneath her fingers again. This time, she forced herself to breathe through the icy waves of despair crashing over her. A vision seized her, one filled with fleeting happiness, Jake's laughter, his little fingers grasping hers, their sunny afternoons in the park. Each image fueled her resolve, morphing into raw energy. She gritted her teeth, pushing against the weight of the shadows. "Know this isn't for you," she roared, and with that proclamation she threw herself at the altar, her palms connecting with the slick surface. The symbols ignited, absorbing the rush of her defiance. A blinding light erupted, pushing back the shadows that raged against her. Emily felt a surge of warmth course through her body, igniting the darkness that clung to her. "Enough!" the figure screamed, its voice twisting into something sharp and shrill. "You cannot fight what you are. You belong to us." Emily gasped as the shadows writhed, piercing her mind with visions, twisted futures where she had surrendered, where Jake had remained lost forever. She rejected them, shaking her head violently, forcing her way through the chaos. "I will find him." The altar throbbed beneath her, pulsating in rhythm with her heart. The brightness spread, consuming the darkness, creating cracks in its malevolent hold. She could feel that freedom was within her grasp, but would it be enough? "Mom!" The voice returned, stronger now, filled with urgency. Each cry echoed in her chest, a promise of hope in the suffocating despair. "Please, you have to come for me. Then, as if something shifted in the air, a doorway opened in the darkness. Pale light streamed through. Was this her way out? She couldn't be sure, but Jake's pleas urged her forward. With one last burst of determination, she sprinted toward the light, pushing through the shadows, trying to claw her back. They slapped against her like icy hands, whispering venom in her ears, but she refused to listen. "Jake!" she screamed, hoping he could hear her even through the chasm that lay between them. The light swallowed her, and for a moment, everything went still. Time suspended, and then a jolt. Emily gasped as she tumbled through a thick fog of swirling emotions. When the world came back into focus, she found herself standing in her living room, bathed in the warm glow of the late afternoon sun. But something felt wrong. "Jake?" The name trembled on her lips, hope mingled with dread. And then she noticed the silence, the absence of his laughter. The echoes of the shadows still lingered in her mind, leaving a bitter aftertaste. Had she truly escaped, or was this just another layer of their sinister game? "Jake!" Panic seized her, and she raced to his room, heart hammering against her ribs. What would she find? Was he safe? Or had the darkness simply let her go to lure her into a false sense of security? As she crossed the threshold, the dread settled in the pit of her stomach like a stone. She held her breath, prepared to confront whatever waited on the other side. But what if it was too late? What if she had left him behind? The door creaked open, and Emily froze. "Jake?" An eerie stillness enveloped the room, and the shadows twisted in the corners, waiting. What awaited her next? Would she find the truth, or a new horror lurking just out of sight? The room was bathed in an unsettling silence as Emily took a cautious step inside. The air felt dense, charged with an unnatural thickness that pressed against her chest. Her heart raced wildly, every corner of her mind screamed that something was wrong, something ominous lay beyond the familiar. "Jake?" she called again, desperation leaking into her voice. The dread coiling in her stomach tightened as she scanned the darkened corners. No response, just the shadows shifting, teasing her with echoes of the past. "Mom?" The soft voice broke through the silence, carrying a hint of fear. It was faint, like a dying ember, but it filled her with a rush of hope. "Jake! Where are you?" she cried, lunging toward the sound. Every instinct in her body ignited, a fiery determination burned as she pushed through the shadows that lurked at the edge of her vision. "I'm coming for you," the voice called again, this time more urgent, tinged with a familiar terror. "Mom, help!" Emily rushed toward the sound, drawing closer with each frantic step. The familiar shapes of her son's toys lay scattered along the floor, but they looked different in the gloom, tainted somehow, as if shadows had seeped into the very fabric of her home. Then she saw him, huddled on the floor, his small body trembling like a leaf caught in a storm. Jake's eyes were wide and hollow, reflecting the chaos that had threatened to engulf them. Nothing was as it seemed. He was shivering, wrapped in the blanket that had once provided comfort but now hung limply like a shroud. "Jake!" She rushed to him, kneeling beside him. "Oh, baby, I thought I lost you." She wrapped her arms around him, holding him tightly as if her embrace would defeat the night and its creeping horrors. "Mom, I don't want to play anymore," he whispered, voice muffled against her shoulder, trembling from more than just cold. Tears slid down his cheeks. They felt like daggers against Emily's heart. The nostalgia of his innocence seemed to resonate against the chilling memories of the shadows. Emily pulled back slightly to look into his eyes, feeling that mixture of fear and relief wash over her. "You're safe now. I won't let them take you from me." As she spoke, the room shifted. The air grew thicker, and the shadows squirmed, angry at their sudden loss of control. Through the darkness, familiar voices echoed. Mrs. Johnson's taunting laughter pierced the silence, a sickening reminder of the souls that lingered just beyond the veil. Emily, the echo turned soft, almost seductive. "Don't you remember how much fun we had?" Cold fear coursed through her blood, memories crashing down like a relentless tide. She tightened her grip on Jake. "We have to leave." Reality felt like a strange mixture of clashing colors and warped reflections. What if the shadows were only sleeping, biding their time to strike. But as she rose, something shifted in the twilight. The room morphed, swirling and buckling like a tumultuous sea. A chasm opened, a portal of darkness deep as space itself. The whispers filled the air, a cacophony of voices, seductive and cruel. "Join us, Emily," they crooned, dark promises dancing in every syllable. "Leave behind the mundane. Come play with us forever." "No," she yelled, the word erupting from her throat like a battle cry. "I will not be taken. You can't have us." With every ounce of strength she possessed, Emily pulled Jake against her, his little body pressed firmly against her own as if forming a protective barrier. The shadows recoiled, sensing defiance where they expected surrender. "Run!" Emily shouted, pushing Jake ahead, her heart pounding fiercely. The door loomed on the other side of the room, glowing faintly. The laughter that surrounded them morphed into shrieks, drowning out everything. They could feel the shadows closing in, hot breath against their backs. As they stumbled toward the door, pain washed over Emily like waves crashing against rocks. Each step was heavier than the last, every inch forward a battle against despair. But she pushed through, the warmth of her son giving strength to her tired limbs. "Mom, I'm scared," Jake cried, but his voice served as a reminder she was not just fighting for herself now. "Hold on to me, Jake. Don't let go," she urged, and they burst through the door, plunging into light. In one swift motion, the shadows shrieked, the sound reverberating through the air, rattling the very foundations of their reality. Then, to Emily's surprise, the darkness began to unravel behind them, pulled apart like a curtain, flickering out as if burned by the brilliance of daylight. Jake looked up at her, confusion etching across his youthful features. "Did we win?" She ruffled his hair, heart swelling with pride at his bravery. "We did, kiddo. We're safe." As they stood there, the air felt different. Lighter. The weight that had haunted her for so long lifted, and a slice of warmth wrapped around them. But even as the light wrapped around them, Emily felt a lingering chill, a thin echo of laughter riding the edges of her mind. It was the reminder that darkness never truly dissipates. It simply waits in the shadows, ready to strike again. "Let us go home, Jake," she said softly, taking his hand as they walked into the golden world waiting beyond. Though the battle had been fierce and the darkness had shown its face, she knew there would always be shadows ready to rise again. Together, they would stand against it stronger and lighter than the darkness that chased them. And as they stepped outside into the bright sunshine, Emily understood that no matter how sinister the neighbor might be, the love they shared could cut through any night. For every darkness that loomed ahead, they would always find a light together. Now, if you enjoyed this thrilling conclusion and want to keep diving into stories like this, you need to subscribe now. Smash that like button because your support keeps the channel alive. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories. Let us hear what you're feeling about this wild ride. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your champions of storytelling count on you.